Today, we're going to talk about Dom Dolla and the art direction behind his brand. If you want to build a cult following, tour the world, and create at the highest level, in today's world, you're going to need a strong visual identity to do it. Even from the beginning, Dom's identity was clear, and by having a clear identity, he didn't just look like a major artist, he became one. Over the last 15 years, I've been a creative director and art director for some of the largest brands in music, as well as luxury fashion brands, and I found the difference between a memorable artist identity or brand lives in the details and how it's put together. In this video, I'm going to break down Dom Dolla's brand from an art direction standpoint. Part of what made him ascend to the peak of the music world at the speed that he did was the strength of his brand. Even from the beginning, it felt expensive. It felt like he was already a big artist. And that's a secret not a lot of people talk about, that sometimes just looking the part gets both fans and the industry to believe in you. So for today's video, I'm going to look at key elements from the art and creative direction world and break down how Dom's brand is a masterclass in executing those elements. Working with our agency, The Cult Creatives, over the last decade, I've seen artists' careers change almost overnight just by launching a new brand identity. We actually have a free art direction playbook with blank slides that you can use to art direct the different contractors for your own brand. If you want that, comment Cult Playbook and we'll send you the document for free. No signups, no sales, no newsletters. It's just something I wanted you to have if you needed it. The power of presentation is everything. It doesn't matter how good the product is if it's packaged wrong. I'll actually give you some tips more towards the end of the video to make sure that you avoid your packaging being wrong. But first, let's talk about identity from a high level. Key number 1, who are you? If you don't know who you are, how can you expect the audience to know? If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I believe that modern brands are movies or ongoing shows that the audience is watching. And from the beginning, Dom's movie, the character the audience was watching, had a clear point of view and the movie had a defined aesthetic. I have a longer video on the Neighborhood Art Supply channel that goes into defining your movie and finding your brand personality archetype. So if you haven't seen that yet, it might be worth checking out. So for Dom, his brand personality archetype is the cool everyman. He's cool and confident, but he's also relatable. You feel like if you bumped into him at a bar, he'd be a great hang just to grab beers with. If Dom was a product, which he isn't, he's an artist, but if he was, he'd be selling relatability. When you become a Dom fan, you almost feel like if you knew Dom in real life, you'd be good friends. So then what's the plot of his story? I have another video on Neighborhood Art Supply that talks about how to find your story's plot. But for Dom, it's rags to riches meets overcoming the monster. The classic rags to riches arc, a self-made artist who rose from local DJ to global headliner. And then that's layered into the overcoming the monster plot, where he defends against the noise and mediocrity of the typical EDM scene. He's using a higher standard, styling, branding, and taste to beat the monster that represents the typical EDM world. Knowing who you are from a positioning and story standpoint is key to building a brand. But the story won't mean much if there's not a defined look, which is what we're going to talk about next. Key number 2, the look. If I were to say, tell me about Dom Dolla's look, what's the first thing that you'd say? Right, the mustache. Now we're in an era where a lot of DJs have mustaches. But in the dance world, when Dom arrived, he was one of the only artists who had a mustache and he repped it. It was a defined, unique look. A concept we talk a lot about at Cult is that if somebody were to dress up as you for Halloween, what would they wear? Would it be easy for them to come up with the fit? So look at the Weeknd's After Hours era. How many people ran that costume for Halloween? It was instantly clear who they were trying to be and what the reference was. Or other examples, think of dressing up as Steve Aoki or Billie Eilish in the neon green era, or Tyler, the Creator. Pretty quickly, when you're thinking about these artists, you might start thinking about what fit you would wear. So this same concept, use this when you're art directing your look for your different eras. Make it easy for the audience to remember. If someone dressed up as you for Halloween, would we recognize it instantly? That's the ultimate brand test. For Dom, you know the mustache and his casual, elevated style. He wears brands, but the brands don't wear him. For his styling alone, there's a consistency that's there. And in 15 years of doing this, I'd say that's the thing that separates good artists from great artists: consistency. Key number 3, consistency. So the third key is simple, but can be catastrophic if you ignore it. Most of the artists I know hate consistency because part of why they became artists was to avoid being put in a box and they wanted to explore different creative curiosities. But consistency for your artist project shouldn't be viewed as a negative. There are ways to create a consistent sandbox where as long as you live inside that sandbox, you can create infinitely. So look at Dom's visuals across the board. Instagram, Spotify banners, YouTube thumbnails, tour posters, live staging visuals. The vibe is instantly recognizable. There's a clear aesthetic and it feels like a refined brand. And he's not just creating posts, he's building a world that fans can live inside. Shout out to the sweat equity guys who coined the concept that your brand should be a mood board that the audience lives inside. Nothing should feel like an afterthought or thrown together. That's what creates brand gravity. Fans feel that cohesion on a gut level. They recognize the artist brand even without a logo because the feeling itself is consistent. So now you may be thinking, yes, I agree with all this, but how do you actually do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next, how to actually art direct. Key number 4, photo and video art direction. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Dom doesn't just show up in front of the camera, there's clear art direction there. Every posted photo looks like a still pulled from a real moment in his life. There's thought behind the mood, the scene, his posture, and the context. It's not just posting an iPhone photo backstage at one of your shows. There should be a clear art direction around the vibe. For example, if you're an artist who's super energetic and that's part of the performance, it may be good to shoot with a motion blur effect that feels like you're capturing action in a moment. Or if your brand is meant to be more high-end and cinematic, you might want to shoot with more high contrast, dramatic lighting, and deep shadows. When you work with a good photographer or videographer, which if you're not already, as soon as possible, you should be, you're giving them strong art direction via mood boards that show the style that you're after with specific callouts of exactly what you're looking for. And if you're not entirely sure what it should be, you can work with the photographer or videographer to build the mood boards together. And here's the shift. Stop thinking about photo shoots as a task. Start thinking of them as world building and storytelling opportunities. Each shoot should add a new page to your brand's visual story. Every photo and every video is a scene in your brand's movie. So quick tip, before your next shoot, write down 3 objectives that you want fans to feel when they see the photo or the video, i.e. confident, relatable, powerful. Then create mood boards that convey those feelings. Use lighting, styling, set pieces, poses, and wardrobes to present the idea that you're after. So now you've got your story and your look dialed in, but what about the other touch points? Key number 5, typography and illustration. All right, so let's talk fonts, which is one of the most overlooked pillars of artist branding. So full transparency, I'm a nerd for fonts. And the reason I'm a nerd for fonts is because I know their power. It's entirely subconscious, but fonts carry deep associations. Sometimes just by using the wrong font, it can devalue an artist brand entirely. So let's look at a few single artworks and tour flyers from Dom. Even though the art direction varies, there's a consistency in the style of typography and the visual approach. The typography and then the backing illustration design is the art. He's using a specific illustration style, a texture layer, and then a defined font to organize an entire campaign. Whether that campaign's around a single or a tour, each campaign is different, but the overall identity feels fresh and familiar. So side note, if you aren't thinking about your releases or tour dates as campaigns, you should be. With the bigger artists we work with, that's always where the conversation starts. What's the campaign? What's the concept? And how does that play into our story, the narrative, and our identity? Many artists will skip this step, but typography and then what it's paired with, whether it's illustration or photography, is 80% of your visual identity. One bad font choice can make all your visuals feel cheap. All right, so you've got almost all the elements, but there's one critical piece left that's still missing. Key number 6, color. So color theory and how people respond to different colors goes deep. I could probably dedicate an entire channel just to what I've learned about color over the last 20 years. But here's the high-level version. Color makes us feel something almost instantly and subconsciously. That's why it's such a huge part of filmmaking and cinematography. If a scene is meant to feel sad, it might be bathed in blue. Passion, you may see hues of red. If the moment's meant to stand out, the color contrast in a shot might make certain elements pop or feel out of place on purpose. Before one frame of any movie shot, there's a defined color palette that sets the tone of the film. You should approach your brand the same way. What's the overall color palette, and what's the palette for each individual campaign? If you Google color palettes from movies, there's tons of sites that show swatches pulled from iconic films. Or you can use color tools that let you pick a dominant tone like blue or green, and then you can explore the supporting colors. For Dom, the palette is dark and muted, a lot of blacks and grays, but then when color shows up, it's intentional. And because the overall canvas is muted and there's a lot of blacks and grays, the color pops instead of it being overwhelming. This approach allows the color pieces, like a tour poster or single art, to stand out. So now you've got all the major pieces, but how will they actually show up to the eyes of the viewer? Key number 7, digital presence. How you show up on social and the different digital platforms is the movie. Every fan, every booker, every label, every playlist editor is going to scan your digital world, and in 60 seconds or less, they're going to make a decision. That quick look is your first impression. At Cult, sometimes we'll spend half a year building an artist brand just to be perfect for that 60-second scan. Your Instagram grid, Spotify banners, YouTube profile, they should all tell a story before the music even plays. You're incredibly valuable as an artist. You've spent years of your life dedicating yourself to this, but how does the audience know how valuable your music is if you're not presenting it that way? So think about Apple and Apple products. Whether you love the company or not, you've probably experienced the unboxing process. And just the packaging alone changes your perception of the product inside. Most people don't know this, but Apple adds hidden weights inside of iPhone boxes to make them feel heavier. The reason they do that is because the mind associates weight with value. If something's heavier, it's more valuable. That trick is a psychological trigger. And everything we've talked about today is the same thing, and the power comes in combining the different elements. So looking at Dom, he absolutely nails this. His Instagram feed has a rhythm, and all of it feels like cohesive choices, and it's curated. And then if you look across the other platforms, Spotify, YouTube, same thing. All the touch points of the brand feel like they're cut from the same cloth. You shouldn't have to explain your brand. The visuals should do it for you. Dom's fans don't just stream the music, they subscribe to the story. And that's what creates loyalty, and that's what allows him to tour the way that he does. Dom Dolla didn't get to where he is today by accident or by luck. He designed it. Every piece was a conscious choice, and together, those choices created a brand that's bigger than just music. So as I mentioned before, if you want a free template designed by us to build your own Art Direction Playbook, comment Cult Playbook, and we'll send you a link to that. And if there's someone else you want me to break down their brand identity, comment who, and we'll set it up for the next one. And earlier I mentioned I'd talk about how knowing if your packaging is wrong. And here's the easiest test for that. Did you consider everything I talked about in today's video when you were building your brand? If not, it's probably wrong. And it's probably wrong not because it looks bad, but because there was no intention put behind it. Think about how you pick the sounds or chords in your own music. Do you ever just throw something in for no reason? No, you don't. Everything is detailed. Everything is thoughtful. That's why it works. So here's your 5-step playbook based on the Dom Dolla brand. 1, match your visual tone across every platform. 2, make mood boards for all of your photo and video work. Choose typography and colors that support your vibe. 4, decide if your brand will be driven by photography or illustration. And then 5, treat social like a digital brand experience. The digital touch points are your brand storefront. And listen, if you're not good at this, that's okay, but find someone who is. You don't need a massive team. You need clarity, intention, and consistency. So I hope this helps. And if there's anything here that you want me to go deeper on, just let me know in the comments. But good luck with your project and everything you're creating. And until next time, peace.